Incredible. No, that sounds like a plan. So, first place I wanted to start was with your PFP. So, I know this is part of the gym's collection, gym's 1251. So, I mean, this has been your PFP for quite some time. So, really curious why you wanted this to be your online identity.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess there's kind of a lot wrapped up in it. So this is it's by the artist Gramplin, who's famous for doing nouns and cryptodes, amongst many other things. He did this project in collaboration with Fingerprints. It's based on the investor Jim Simons, who's a famous mathematician turned investor who actually recently passed away this year. But he had some incredible returns, was able to beat the market many years running using quantitative models, I guess, quantitative trading models. So he's famous for that, well respected for that. There's I forget exactly how many. There's 2,000 gyms, 2,048 maybe, something like that. And we've just had this oddly kind of strong community throughout the whole bear market in the gyms chat, in the channel and Fingerprints, and just really enjoyed each other's company. I feel like this is just it's a cool character. It's got the nouns glasses, the Fingerprints hat, so it kind of like represents my association with those things. This is actually not the one that I've been sporting for the last like 3 years. This is a different gym, but it looks almost identical. It just has a different background, which I changed the other day. It also gives me like a somewhat a bit of entertainment, the fact that it's not really worth anything. So I do have a lot of respect for CryptoPunks, but I kind of enjoy the fact that I don't have a multi-$100,000 profile picture. I don't know what this would cost you, but it would be a few $100s probably. So yeah, that's the gyms. That's my gym. It's
Amazing.
cool.
I love it. Yeah, because I mean, I know when I met up with you in person, you're rocking the hat. So that's pretty cool. I still
Yeah,
need to get
I have
around
many
to
of those
getting my own
actually.
PFP hats.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's a yeah. I got them done by a place here in the UK. They embroidered the gym onto a cap, and I got like 10 of them made, and they're actually great. I love them. So yeah, that's my way of merching up when I'm out and about.
Incredible. Yeah, and that was the first thing that I noticed, and they did a great job. So yeah, I need to get around to getting a small skull hat at some point. Well, let's
Yes, you
dive
should
into
absolutely.
it. Let's start with As Seen by Kim Essendorf. So this is a really interesting project that I think it's fairly recent by Anna Maria Caballero. And it seems like, from what I saw on Twitter and just from kind of reading the description here, she wrote a poem and then people kind of like remixed it in their own way and then minted those 50. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, more or less. So yeah, she wrote this poem, and then she printed, I guess, 50 copies of it. And then as she met people at different events who she had a relationship with, I think it was already people that she had a relationship with, but maybe not. Maybe there were some new people involved too. She would get them to annotate the poem in just any way they saw fit. So I annotated a poem at a lunch with her in Venice during the Bright Moments finale event back in whenever that was, late April, start of May, with a couple of other people, with Mistor and Elizabeth Sweet and Durdis. And she had a really cool way of presenting the work. Like it came in a like beautiful folder, and we all got white gloves and pencils to annotate the work, and just kind of did what we liked. And then this one is kind of special because it's Kim Assendorf's annotation of it, and he was the only person who insisted on taking the paper away with him to do the annotation. And so he took it back to Berlin, I guess, annotated it, and then mailed it to Anna Maria. And so it's the only one that is actually sort of not in pristine form. It's been folded in order to put it in an envelope and mail it back to her. And I saw them all at an event we went to in Menorca. Anna Maria had them all hanging there, and his was very distinctive. I don't actually know what he's done here. I assume he's used a plotter to do this, but maybe I should ask him. But anyway, it gives a very cool effect to it, and it's a really cool project as well. So it was cool thing to be a part of. And then actually the the minting of the work was done as a sort of separate thing. So it was possible to mint them, or it was actually an auction on Highlight, and now there are still some available to mint if anyone's interested. And you can just mint. I think the auction was randomized, but now you can just mint whichever annotator's work is still available. And yeah, it's a set of 50. I think it's a very cool project. It's cool. Cool mix of poetry and community collaboration, and then other people's creative input and bringing it to the blockchain. And it's just, yeah, it's exciting. I love seeing stuff like this.
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean that story spans countries, and like
Yeah,
I
it
think
does,
that's
right?
just
Yeah.
what's so beautiful about this space is that it's people from all over the world coming together for a love of art, and I think this piece especially like encapsulates that. And like this one just looks very Kim-esque. Like I don't know exactly what
It does, yeah.
he did there. Like it kind of has that like pixel sorting feel to it, especially
Yeah,
with
it
like the
does.
red color kind of like all glitched out. So yeah, this one was really, really interesting. And yeah, just flipping through the collection, just seeing how people kind of remixed it in their own way. I thought this was such a cool project. And yeah, really glad that you chose to select this one.
Nice.
Cool. Well, let's move on to the next one here. So this is Infinite Images by Holly Herden and Matt Dryhurst. So from reading the description, it seems like to their knowledge, this is the only like published output using the original Dall-E model, which is fascinating. And just, I mean, from looking at the piece at face value, I mean, it just striking colors, really interesting, kind of like robots grabbing at fruits, almost like a still life. It's quite fascinating. So yeah, really curious how you came across this one and how this got into the Blackbird collection.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit to unpack here, I guess. So the project is Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst were actually, my understanding is they're quite good friends with Sam Altman, and he asked them to come in and test out Dall-E when it was first created, and they went in for a few days or a week and basically just kind of tried to stress test it and see what it was capable of. And there's a set of work now which has been minted by a fellowship. I think there's 600 and something, 700-ish images, and it's kind of just a broad spectrum of their experimentation. And when you explore all the imagery, it's quite amazing to see how they really managed to kind of push out into the boundaries of what it was capable of at the time. It's something that's been minted retroactively, like a line draw, so that's created quite a kind of buzz of conversation on the timeline. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's a cool way of bringing this type of thing to a collectible state. This one, I just particularly like the idea that there's a kind of, it's a machine imagining a machine's hand involved in this still life drawing. So there's a kind of like it's been asked to create a what we might think of as a kind of traditional painting, a still life painting, but then it's inserted itself in there, assumedly they're prompting, but I think it gives a cool extra layer to it that you're thinking about the machine creating and the machine adding itself in. And it's also just like really visually striking. Like I can imagine having that up on a wall and being quite excited by it. It's a good talking point. And then Holly and Matt, Holly in particular, has a quite a significant art career. She's been exhibited at the Whitney and the Serpentine, and she's done a TED talk. I think she pops up all over the place. I have other of her work as well. So I think she's got quite a she has already had a really interesting career, but probably a very interesting career ahead of her as well. So I think it's kind of cool to be part of that journey.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I need to do a little bit more research on them. I mean, I've seen their name pop up everywhere in the AI space and saw a few pieces that Fellowship had at Art Basel exhibited, which
Yeah, that's right.
looked
Yeah, when we were
striking.
at Art Basel, there was that huge the mural on the behind the wall from the table that we were sitting at, and that was really cool to explore in that scale, that size, and it was split into the panels too, which was interesting. I would have thought kind of, if you told me about that it wouldn't really work, but it did. It gave an extra depth to it. It was a fun way to see it.
Yeah, I mean that whole wall was just covered by this one, pretty much one piece, and it was yeah fascinating.
Yeah, so I think
Awesome.
that
Well,
covers that.
let's continue walking here. This is the first art blocks piece that we'll be talking about today, and this one is a special one since it's mint zero, typically reserved for the artist. This is Titromatic number zero by Mount Vitruvius. I mean, the output is incredible. Absolutely love the colors, love the movement, the brush strokes, just the playfulness. Like all of his work has this playfulness to it, especially his work on FX Hash, all kind of like take the name of like a movie that he kind of changes the name. So like this kind of feels kind of that playful vibe that he's known for. But yeah, would love to learn a little bit more about this and how we were able to acquire number zero.
Yeah, so Matt Vitruvius lives reasonably close to me here in London, so we hang out a bit, and I kind of met up with him to give him early feedback on this when he was working through it in the months prior to releasing. And I think this is an exceptional project. It's kind of like it launched at a time when the market was quite quiet, and I really think didn't get the fanfare that it should have got. Had it launched, I think in 2021, it would have been one of the big hits. It has that kind of aesthetic that's like very broadly appealing, but then as you explore the collection, you realize that he's managed to test out this concept in lots of really interesting ways, and it survives really well across the large collection while having that cohesiveness. It's really beautiful work. And this Mint Zero, he very kindly, I was very surprised by this, but he gifted it to me months later as a thank you for the kind of conversations that we had when he was just evolving it early on. And so, yeah, I kind of consider that a great honor to have been allowed to be a part of it in this way. So yeah, delighted to have it.
That's beautiful. That's so cool. I guess question that I have, and I'm sure others do too. I mean, how did you come across generative art and art blocks in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the crypto space for a long time, and I was quite active during what some may remember, some won't, DeFi summer in 2020, which was when the kind of yield farming craze kicked off as a new way of releasing tokens. And that died down in late 2020. And I kind of went out exploring to see what else was happening in crypto, what I should be investing in, what I should be thinking about, and came upon art blocks and other NFT art, like really by accident, and started collecting without really thinking of it as an investment of any sort. I just found it fascinating and liked sort of collecting these sets, and it was just very affordable to do so back then because there weren't that many people participating. And then kind of fast forward 6-12 months, it became this massive phenomenon. So it sort of ended up consuming me, but I'm very glad that it did, because it's like, to me, it has a lot more meaning and depth to it than a lot of the other stuff I've been involved with in the crypto world. So the art and the artist journeys, I find that fascinating, and then all of the real life events that I get to go to and meet and hang out with such wonderful people. It's like a real, it's really inclusive, it's really open minded. There's Once you get away from like sheer speculation, you end up with a much more like a community that has a much longer perspective in mind, like wanting to develop friendships that last a long time and thinking about each other's journey through that environment. And so I've just found that very rich and very rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Because my grandfather was an artist growing up, and he does not have an art background. And like, I would hear stories of him trying to like get into shows, and like they would tell him no because like he doesn't have an art background. So like growing up, I always thought just like the art world was like very like insulated, like not everybody is welcome. But when I found art blocks and generative art overall, like that couldn't be further from the truth. So I think generative art for me personally really unlocked all art, and that's really due thanks to art blocks and from getting in the Discord and just asking artists questions and getting answers back and just like feeling like I belong. So yeah, I completely echo that sentiment. And I mean, there's something just really, really special here.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's amazing. Long may it continue.
Awesome. Let's move on to this next one. On These Streets, number 86 by Andrea Chiulu. I have not come across this piece before, but I was very excited when I saw this come up on the wall, and I decided to put it next to the previous piece just because of the movements of I love the movement of the lights across the sky as well as the kids running. So please tell us more a little bit more. Tell us more about this one.
Right, yeah, I see that now actually that you pointed out. That's a cool idea, and also with the agar off to the side and the monochrome as well. So this came out not that long ago. Was it earlier this year or end of last year? I can't remember. And this is kind of fits into this, I guess, genre of post photographic AI work. There's certainly people who aren't stoked with that genre naming, but I think it does a good enough job conveying what the idea is. It's just working with these image generation models to produce what are kind of pseudo photographic images. And then this one, my understanding is it's based on a kind of nostalgia that Andrea had for kind of New York urban hip hop culture in the 90s. So I can't remember where he grew up, Italy maybe. So he wasn't in New York, but kind of, you know, what's the word, like romanticized it a little bit, as did I actually, growing up as a teenager in the 90s. So it kind of resonates with me there. And then it has this, I don't know how he trained it or how he prompted it, but it has a very strong sentiment of the street photography, of black and white street photography from New York, from the kind of last half of last century, and manages to bring that through really well compositionally as well, which it seems like that's a difficult thing to get right with the post photography stuff. So yeah, I just really like it. I think that for me, this is the most iconic image of the whole set, and I think I was even bidding against Flamingo when I bought it, and so I probably overpaid because I got too excited. But in retrospect, I'm glad that I did. Like, I really like it. It's the kind of thing that I think I'd like to get printed and have on the wall, because I think it's also a great conversation piece when talking about what possibilities there are with AI imagery, and where we could potentially go, and why it's, you know, I always want to defend against why it's neither a scam nor is it taking away from anybody else's art practice, whatever they do, whether it's pure photography or it's something else. I think that it's just a new avenue to explore. It's a new tool to create work. So this is a good example of that. It's also I didn't include any of Rupe's work, which I also love. His series in particular, Life in West America, Reworld, and Vacation, which have been popular over the last year or two. I think it's a really cool area to be exploring. It's very aesthetically interesting.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And especially this piece, I think, is especially striking. And I know photography holds a special place in your heart. And I think many are not aware that you are a photographer. How did you get into photography in the first place, as both collecting them as well as taking photos?
Yeah, I am quite enthusiastic about photography. I studied it in high school, and then I've just kind of kept it up as a practice ever since. I've never pursued it beyond just personal enjoyment, but I've traveled a lot. My wife worked in humanitarian disaster response for 10 years or so, and so we would live in all kinds of interesting places and then travel from those places. And so I kind of took up the camera as a way of exploring a new environment, and have just always enjoyed that process of like finding an interesting scene, composing it well, and then just trying to capture it, especially if the subjects in the scene are really dynamic. Like, it could be hard to frame and capture things well, but I find it a fun kind of, it's almost like a hunt. You're hunting for a great image. And then because of that, I've ended up following lots of documentary photographers and photojournalists over the years, and just kind of appreciating their work and buying some prints, but really not that many. Like I wasn't much of a collector prior to getting involved in the NFT world. I did have the like. It's much less prominent now. Photography's kind of died off a bit, but during 2021, when everything was going crazy, a lot of photographers came into the scene, and I was lucky enough to make friends with some of the people I considered kind of heroes prior to that, because I was able to kind of help them navigate understanding how to mint work and potentially bring work to market. And so that was really exciting. And then I've gone away and done some photography trips in interesting places too. So yeah, just a massive appreciator, really.
Love it. Yeah, no, I'm always a fan of when you post things on your social media. I remember like, maybe it was like mountain goats on top of that roof that were fighting. Like that photo
Oh
looked
yeah,
like it was AI generated. Like that was incredible.
yeah, that was funny. That was actually just unexpected. We were at this animal park in Chamonix just a couple of months ago, and I mean, I knew that there were these ibex there, but I didn't expect them to fight on the roof, which they did for like an hour, which is great to watch. The kids were loving it too.
That's amazing. Absolutely love it. Awesome. Well, let's move on. So yeah, I've got a little monochrome section over here. So next we've
Oh
got
yeah,
agar
I love
number
it.
83 by Emily Edelman. And this one is another very special generative piece where the palette, Emily reminded me that it's the Blockbird palette. So I would love
Yeah,
to
it
hear the
is.
story around that. Because I mean, obviously, it's visually striking, and just knowing that it's an ode to you is, I think, extra special.
Yeah. So I had, I guess yeah, I'm going to struggle to piece this all together. Emily will just be, I can see she's on here. She'll just be laughing at me. So the idea was this launched in New York. It was a Bright Moments thing. And the idea was that you could name the palette that you had. So your mint pass was the palette, but you didn't know what work was going to come through. And I had something on that evening. I was in London. I had something on that evening, or I just wasn't able to stay up for it. Maybe I can't remember, because it would have been later in New York, so it would have been really late in London, perhaps. But anyway, so I kind of missed it, which I was a bit disappointed by. And then woke up in the morning and realized that there was this one named, um, like named after me, which is fantastic. And then I met Emily um, at a karaoke bar in Tokyo, like a month or two later, as part of the Bright Moments Tokyo event, which was really cool. It was like a surprise kind of meeting, because she didn't know what I looked like. I'm not even sure that I knew what she looked like at that point, but we hit it off, and we've been good friends ever since. She loves giving me shit about my New Zealand accent, which is well deserved.
That's
Especially when I
incredible.
try and say, I can tell you obviously, when I try and say Newark Airport.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, your accent is top notch. Yeah, I mean, my
Thank
wife
you.
said the
Yeah,
same things. Like, he's got the coolest accent. I'm like, he really does. Like,
I
it's
work
really
very hard on
unfair.
it,
I
but
mean,
I'm
being from
I'm
Chicago,
glad to
our
have it
accents
appreciated.
are pretty boring. So, yeah, yours is pretty awesome.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, I just love zooming in on like the pixelations. It's such an interesting work. Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah,
that
it's
you
a great
chose
work.
this one
I
to
love it
include.
too. Yeah, I love that whole series. I actually have quite a few of these, but I had to include this one because it is the Blockbird after all.
Love it. Cool. Well, let's make it to the back wall here, and then we'll go to the breeze after that. But I put the light years over here again as part of this kind of monochrome corner here. And I mean, this series is extra special to me because the artist that Dmitry Chernyak was in collaboration with, his estate, the Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, he spent the last 9 years of his life in Chicago. And there's actually a mural of him painted on a
Oh right.
building where I used to live in Chicago, which is very interesting. So I'd walk by this pretty much every single day to take the bus to go to school. And I'm like, who is this person? And then multiple years later, Dimitri has this project and it all comes full circle. So it's such a special project, and this is such a special piece. I bought the book. It's incredible. I bought the book for my sister as well. So yeah, would love to learn a little bit more about this output and specifically and how it got into your collection.
Yeah, so this does have a bit of a story with it too. So I'm a big Dimitri fan, have been ever since I kind of arrived into the art blocks world. I wasn't there to mint ringers, but I did buy a couple shortly after I discovered art blocks on secondary, and then I how did it work? Dimitri said that he was going to do a drop on Playground, which was back in the day. There was art blocks curated Playground and Factory, and Playground was for artists to release when they had already released a curated work. But he knew that it might be botted, so the idea was that he would just announce it randomly. And I set up this very janky script to try and predict if there was a change to the Artblocks website, where it would change to show his name in the Playground menu, because I knew it would be live then. But it was really bad, and it like falsely notified me many times, including in the middle of the night. So I just had to abandon it, and then the project minted without me, but then I was able to buy one of these on secondary. So this is Eternal Pump that I'm talking about, which is kind of a significant precursor to this. But what Eternal Pump meant was being part of a chat, a group of people who owned Eternal Pumps and were Dimitri fans, and then went on to the Rapture project, but was also a place where Dimitri would share and talk about this project leading up to it. So I was very excited about this. But I can't remember why. I don't think I was in a position to be able to afford easily a mint pass at the time. The mint passes were quite expensive. They went on auction, and then the idea was that you bought a mint pass, and then there would be a kind of time slot according to the number of your mint pass, in which you could choose the output from 100 assigned outputs. And I didn't have any mint passes leading into this, but I was trying to coordinate a trade with somebody, which I did into the kind of early hours of the morning in New Zealand. I was in Dunedin at the time. I was just staying at this place by the beach. I remember taking a photo once I'd kind of completed this task, but I spent like 3 hours trying to negotiate this trade with this guy, and then eventually bought 3 passes from him, or traded to get 3 passes, and then I finished the trade just as my time slot came up for the number of the mint pass. This is all very confusing, sorry, but it meant that I could choose 3 images in succession, and I chose 3 that worked really well as a triptych. So this is one of that triptych, and it's very memorable for me just for that kind of crazy negotiation session leading up to it, and then me being very stoked that I was able to come away with these works. And I think this is some of Dimitri's, possibly is Dimitri's best work, best series. And yeah, the collaboration with the Laszlo Moholy-Nagy estate is amazing, because his work is fascinating, and I think formative for a lot of different artists and kind of subgenres that came beyond after him. He also has some incredible photography, which Fellowship actually released some of his photography in collaboration with his estate too. So I own some of those. I think I have 3 of those. Yeah. Anyway, that was very long-winded, but I'm delighted to have this, because I think it's exceptional work. This is something I intend to hold for a very long time.
That's incredible. Yeah, I didn't realize that you got a triptych, and it seems like from that story, I mean that kind of reads like a movie. I mean, it seems like it was like last second, like getting everything going, and I can only imagine how stressful you on like a beach, probably on your phone on a laptop, like wheeling and dealing. So I can only imagine what that scene looked like.
Yeah, it was great. It was like 4 a.m. The guy was really hard to trade with. He was like just kept coming back with tougher and tougher conditions, and I think I ended up trading like 9 or 10 different pieces, and each piece had to be like, we had to kind of come up with a pseudo value for it and how that fit into the trade. And is this enough? Like, no, we're going to need 0.15 ETH more worth of art in order to get it over the line. And I'm like, okay, well, what about this one then? It's slightly rarer or slightly more interesting or whatever. And it just took forever. But finally got it done at like 4 in
That's
the morning, I think.
incredible. I mean, this is a collector walk and talk, so I think now is a good time to chat about this. But I mean, since ringers, again, you mentioned that you didn't mint them, but you did collect a few on secondary. And just whenever I would see the feed come up, I would see the Blockbird name, and then I would look at the output, and like every single one was always so tasteful and interesting. And I'm like, you were probably one of the first wallets that I really started tracking. So thank you for helping me develop my own taste. I mean, how did you kind of like select, like if you look back at ringers for the ones that you selected, like how do you remember like what you were looking for, like what kind of like spoke to you within that series? Because I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but when Blockbird collects something, it's like, oh, that's an incredible output. I mean, we'll go to the memories of Chilin at the end, but I think we're all very interested just to kind of learn a little bit more about that process.
Okay, well, that is very complimentary. So thank you. I do appreciate that. Um, it's a good question. I mean, for ringers, I honestly don't think I can really remember. I mean, some stuff just hits for me, some doesn't. Um, how do I think about it? There's, I mean, of course, early on, there was this kind of obsession with the idea of rarity and like because rarity also equaled value. If you wanted to um, have a better chance of selling something for a higher price, and then that just freed up more funds to collect more stuff. So that everything was kind of informed by that to some degree, but it was pretty common for me to find the rarest thing to be not necessarily the most appealing. And so then I'd be exploring, looking for other qualities like distinctiveness that wasn't necessarily reflected in the traits. It was just visually distinct or curious in some way, or it somehow kind of pushed the boundaries of the algorithm a bit, but managed to really retain the feel. I guess like to some degree that's kind of a boring answer, but it just comes from like gut feeling, or just maybe it's informed by poring over photography books for years and years and years and thinking about composition when framing photos and how I can get something to be well balanced or have a yeah, I don't know, but, just be structurally interesting in terms of like with the combination of color and light, and then the pieces that make up the composition, the actual physical components to it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer. Sorry. I mean, one thing I can, which I think you were alluding to before we started chatting, was I did have a way of, and it kind of evolved through the early Outblocks days, a way of finding what the outputs would look like slightly before other people might see them when they were coming through the Outblocks render. So back in the day, I don't think it's like this anymore, but when you minted, there was, depending on the complexity of the work, there was a delay before the mint, the token was created, but you couldn't see what the work was. But there were tools, or often a kind of shortcut to see the image come through, or maybe even a shortcut to see what the rarity traits were before the image itself was revealed. And because it was such a frenzy in 2021, you'd get a lot of flippers come in, and they would mint 5-10 things and then list them all at the floor, hoping to sell them for twice the price that they minted them for, or 3 times the price they minted them for, or something like that. But they would do it immediately without knowing what the actual output looked like. And often I could see what the output looked like, or I could tell that the output had a rarer trait, or was likely to have a rarer trait. And so I would jump on it and buy it, sometimes buy it kind of sight unseen, or sometimes buy it having seen the output but not having the rest of the collection as a reference point. So I was just kind of going on gut, like, does this look interesting, or does this look compelling, or does it look maybe like it's going to be similar to the other outputs that I've seen. And so I had ways of. I mean, other people did this too. I wasn't completely unique in this regard. It evolved over time. But yeah, I did have ways of like being able to snipe stuff early on if I thought it was distinct. And I think the whale that we'll see in a bit falls into that category. That it wasn't rare by any real sense, but I could tell immediately that it was a very cool emergent quality, or a very cool emergent example, and so just jumped on it.
That's incredible. I mean, I still think with even having a tool like that, like you need to decide from using your eyes, like, is this something that is interesting? So, like, yes, you have that tool, but like, there's still taste required to have that tool be helpful, especially if like your goal is to find the most compelling work to put up on your wall, then it still takes a little bit of both to make that happen. But that's really fascinating.
It
Did
was
not
definitely
know that
an
that happened.
adrenaline-inducing experience. Like when throughout kind of art block summer, I was in New Zealand, and so the mints would always take place sometime between like 2 and 5 a.m. in New Zealand. And so I would get up like 15, 20 minutes before the mint happened, kind of catch up on what people were saying, and then mint work, and then spend the next hour or so on secondary, like either selling works that I didn't resonate with as much, or just buying works as they came up, based on the different qualities that I was looking for. And then would try to go back to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning, just completely fail because I was way too wired. Just would lie there thinking about stuff for the next 2 hours.
That's amazing. And I mean, that was very similar to the early days of FX Hash. It's like the way that it used to be, there was these like rolling minting windows. So like if
Oh,
those
right.
minting windows were in the middle of the night, it's like I set my alarm for like 2:45 in the morning, have my cup
Nice.
of
Yeah, yeah.
coffee like ready for me, and then like for the next 3 hours, it's just like hanging out with people that are staying up all night. Like it was so much fun, and you're trying to go back to sleep and your heart's racing, and it's like you wake up in the morning and be like, did that actually just happen? But then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
check your
yeah,
wallet and be like,
absolutely.
yeah, that actually happened. That was not a dream. So yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And I mean, those are like some of my fondest memories. So I can only imagine that they're the same for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a real buzz. Great. And it was great being in all the chats during those times as well. People were so excited.
Yeah, no, those are memories I'll definitely never forget. Love it. Well, we went down memory lane there. Let's continue on to the first half of this gallery here. So the feature wall here, we've got Breeze B7 by Iskra Velichkova, and this series is incredible. I think both the A and the B series that she put out are amazing. I personally like the color ones a little bit more, and the output that you got is just so cool. So yeah, I know this had to do with the event that took place in Menorca. So would love to learn more about this piece and that trip that you went on.
Yeah, sure. So this was only a month or so ago, maybe, yeah, I think roughly a month ago. And it was in Menorca. It was an event called Med-Sea Art, which is organized by some people who live in Menorca, with the idea of kind of trying to merge a little bit of the traditional art appreciation scene there with this new kind of Web3 NFT art world. And it was great fun. There was not ultimately there wasn't that many people there as collectors. There was only myself, Icon, and Anti-Discipline who were there, but there was a great community of artists who joined: Iskra Marcelo, Ana Maria Caballero, Ana Carreras. Who else was there? Dario. Um, I'm sure I'm forgetting people, but anyway, it was a really fun event. It was really good few days of just eating good food and hanging out on the beach and exploring these gallery spaces. And this was Iskra had two sets of work. There was Breeze A, which was available to collect, and then Breeze B, which she gifted to collectors. So people who were there, or people who have been really involved with her practice over the last few years. And yeah, I love this one. I think it's incredible. I love her work in general, but this one just sings to me. And I have a Breeze. Am I getting that right? This is Breeze B, right? And I have a Breeze A, which is a monochrome to pair with this. And yeah, they're both exceptional. And yeah, I mean, part of one of the reasons of including this was just to kind of mention the fact that these in real life experiences, um, like this, like Bright Moments, even Art Basel and the kind of bigger NFT events have just been a real highlight for me. Like meeting all of these people and going on this kind of shared exploration of the space, and then you catch up with the same people each. Or not necessarily exactly the same, but there's very similar people each time you go to these events, and it's a cool experience traveling the world with art and good community.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, going to live events, I've only gone to a few, but each one that I have gone to, just like meeting the people, like having dinner with them, sharing stories, like that's what I'm always most excited about. It's like I love looking at the art, I love seeing what's on display, but like talking with people, meeting people that you've chatted with online for years. I mean, like when we met each other, it's like, holy shit, like we've been DMing for however many years, but like to
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
have a drink, to share a dinner, like it just means so much. So yeah, whenever people have like a Bright Moments piece up and talking about how they minted it with the artist, like I can only imagine what that feels like. And I just love and hope that we continue to have more of these types of events all over the world, so as many people as possible can experience that same feeling. Because I mean, it is truly beautiful, and what's so special about this space.
yeah. Completely agree. I'm sure we will too. I can't see any reason why we'd stop. We all love it
I
too much.
completely agree. So I feel like it's only going to become more prevalent, which I'm all for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's move on to the back wall here. So I think you're the only person that I'm aware of that loves mountains more than I do. So when I looked at this meridian here, I mean, blue's my favorite color. Just this project in general is just one of my favorite generative projects of all time. So seeing this just blown up big on the wall here just looks absolutely incredible. So yeah, I would love to learn a little bit more about this piece and how it got into your collection.
Yeah, sure. So Meridian, for those that remember and those that don't, was launched at like peak art blocks mania. So it was just really insane the kind of activity that things were getting at that time. So I minted some meridians. I can't remember how many, but I got some of the rarer ones in the collection, which I went on to sell over the next few days for quite a lot. I mean, I really liked them, but it's hard to justify keeping something when it's accelerated in value so rapidly, and especially when it was a case of some of the rarer ones which were really coveted by the funds and the big collectors of the time were not necessarily the ones that I resonated with the most. So I sold some of the ones that were very valuable and then bought some others that I really appreciated, and this was one of them. I just this again didn't have any rarer qualities to it, but just struck me the instant I saw it as being just a really incredible output, and so jumped on it. I still think it was like, I mean, it was considered cheap at the time, but I feel like it was still expensive. I feel like it was still 7 ETH, something like that. But that's just how wild it was. Like that was still a rising floor, I think, at 7 ETH. And maybe I sold. I think I got a pink prime, which I sold to 6529 for like 50 ETH or 60 ETH or something like that. It was a crazy period. Anyway, this one to me is, yeah, just like the mountain feel, the richness of the blues. I have this printed in a large format and framed. It's in my wife's office, so I get to see it every day, and it's sort of been revealing to me just how much you grow in appreciation when you have something in a decent size actually in your life that you see regularly. So it just gets my appreciation of it grows more and more each time I see it. So it's very unlikely I'd ever sell this. I really love having it in the collection and love having it in the house. So yeah, and I also love all of. I consider myself a bit of a matte super fan, so I have meridians and subscapes, folios, Hachur, filigrees, bunch of his Tezos work. Like definitely a big appreciator of his. He lives in here in London too, so I get to chat with him fairly regularly, which is great. He's a great guy.
That's so cool. And yeah, just to go back on kind of living with your art, I think especially as like digital displays and we just continue to figure out how better to live with this art, I think it's only going to make us love the work in our collections even more. So I'm just kind of like expecting that someday in the future, like we'll have so many digital displays and I'll have like 20 throughout my room. And if you just want to like click a button, if I'm in like a mountain mood, I can just like have it fully curated with like all of my favorite mountain pieces. And I can just see a world where all of this digital art just going to come to life in so many unique ways, many of which I'm sure we're not even thinking of today. And it's just going to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
our lives so much better. So yeah, I think just having the physical prints is definitely step one, and especially if like that's how the artist wants to have it like brought into the physical world. But somebody like a Kim Assendorf to have like a cargo where it's like a digital display just like constantly moving, it's like that's gonna be so cool. It's just not feasible for most, I feel like at this point, just with the how expensive digital displays are. But with time, I'm sure it's gonna come down just like everything else. So I really look forward to that future.
yeah. I've been hearing cool things about Screen Tech developing into these um, what do you call it? Like it's almost like fabric, like rollable screens that can kind of fit around corners of the wall, or can be just a lot more adaptable, basically, and the cost of that just coming down significantly. So it makes sense to me that within let's say 2 or 3 years, that we'll have the ability to buy very high resolution, very portable, maneuverable screens for a very manageable price, and then we can actually just have screens up all over the house, which would be awesome. Because at the moment, you just can't really do that. Like my Samsung frame was £1,000, I guess. So the idea of having 10 of those up in the house is a bit intimidating. I'm sure people do that, but it's not really reasonable for most people. But if there were only a couple hundred or 100, that would be a very different world.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get there. And there's going to be like new designs or ways to like change aspect ratios that will look natural and tasteful. So yeah, I'm really excited about the future of display technology and how it's going to make our art look even better.
Agreed.
Amazing. Well, let's move on to this Deaf Beef piece, which is absolutely incredible. It should be moving for everybody. If it isn't, it's a live video, or it's a video. It's like a minute and 30. So if you don't have time to watch it right now, definitely watch it after the fact. But this piece is not only is it amazingly Deaf Beef, but it's hysterical. It's so creative and just what he does with all of his projects is just so next level. It's even hard to put words next to it. But for this project specifically, I know you gave him a phrase and then he created this video for you. So the phrase I wrote down, it's time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana, which I love. But yeah, would love for you to kind of walk through how this came to be and then what your reaction was when you watched this for the first time.
Yeah, this is. I love this, and I'm just a massive fan of Diffie. I got to hang out with him in Patagonia when we went down there for the bright moments. I'm going to turn away from it because all I'm hearing is the arrow noise. I got to hang out with him when we went to Patagonia for the hash marks project with Bright Moments, and he's such a lovely guy. He's just very down to earth, but he's very considered. He's very intelligent, but then he's also very creative. And he's very skilled as well. He's so multidisciplinary in terms of the things he's able to do. Like he's a musician, he's a metal worker, he's a coder. He's not afraid to set up the camera and try and experiment with video work. And so this project is called Payphone, and he had actually had this open for a while. And the idea was that he would open the payphone at random almost and just announce it in the Discord, and that you could submit a transaction to kind of quote unquote dial in your text prompt, and then he would answer the phone, and the phone would speak out loud the text prompt, and then that would get recorded on chain, and then he would go away and make a video to reflect the prompt. And I had not been able to line up or manage to catch one of the openings of the payphone, but what I did do was buy Feral File had this release in conjunction with MoMA a while back, and it was, I think, 5 pieces of work from different artists, but one of them was you got a phone card from Deaf Beef, and that phone card allowed you to dial in outside of his random calling hours. And so I bought one of those, and I phoned in this, which is just a random one-liner that I found somewhere, which is, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. You can kind of interpret that in a couple of ways, which I guess makes it funny and quirky, like that fruit flies as in the flies that buzz around like bananas, or that fruit, if it is flying, it may fly like a banana flies. And then he's come up with this like hilarious rendition of that prompt, which is involving a lot of fruit flying, including bananas flying, and hitting this Amazon box with a bullseye on it. And it's definitely worth checking out some of the other interpretations of his of the prompts as well, because they're almost always quite funny. I actually have another one too, which has got a kind of longer story to it. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Reddit post "Knowledge is Power," Francis Bacon, which is "Knowledge is power" is obviously a saying by Francis Bacon, but some kid interpret it as the saying is "Knowledge is power." France is bacon, like as in the country is bacon, the food group, and there's a hilarious Reddit post which I highly recommend googling for. So that has not been interpreted yet, but will be at some point, I guess. And yeah, he's just fantastic. The Hashmarks project was great, and then all of his other audiovisual work is so good. I'm very happy to own some of that.
Everything he does is so unique, and I just think the way that he blends like blockchain technology with some other form of technology, like whether it be like hash marks where it's like metal work, like he's using something that was invented thousands of years ago with something that was invented 10 years ago, and he blends it together just so perfectly. And I think that's part of why he's just such an incredible artist. And do you know if he just like uses stuff around like his home to create this? Like, do you know anything about the creative process? Because it's just like it's so funny. Like just like a random Amazon box. He's like put a bullseye on like a bunch of random arrows. It's like, did he go out to buy those arrows for this, or he just had them lying around? It's like, oh, this is just what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, if I was to guess, I would say it is just stuff he has floating around, because nothing seems too contrived in the ones that I've seen. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I
they're
mean that's
always
my guess
they're always
too,
watching.
just for how
They're very
creative he
entertaining.
is. Excellent. Well, yeah, I'm very glad that you put that on here. And yeah, just watching this kind of on loop for a few minutes while I was putting this together, and just like the background noise, like I was in the other room and I just heard like a bullseye. And I'm like, what's going on? And I forgot that I still had the
Yeah,
gallery up, and like it kind of scared me. But once I figured out what it was, all good.
now you know what it is. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
Excellent.
a
Well, let's
great
flip
sound, like the
around.
flurrying of the arrows.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I mean, it just comes out of nowhere. It's like whack, 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 whack. Yeah, it's very, very funny. Let's go on to this Tyler Hobbs piece. This is flight number 19. So I know this was part of the Feral File project maybe a couple years ago that was really focused around plotter work. So this output, super unique. And I know I was flipping through some of the other outputs as part of this collection here. But yeah, I know looks like you collected this fairly recently. So yeah, I would love to learn a little bit more about how this project got on your radar, and how it got into the Blockbird collection.
Yeah, sure. So I minted and bought quite a few Fidenzas when they released in 2021, and then ultimately ended up selling them all. They were like in a large part what's been able to fund a lot of my other collecting. But then I really am an appreciator of Fidenza, absolutely. And then after I had sold them all, I just kind of felt like there was a real gap in my collection when it came to Tyler's work. And So just started digging around and thinking about what would make sense to collect there, to just add that in. And I had barely noticed these being released, I think, but I'm pretty sure they were released in the 2021 madness, or maybe possibly it was early 2022. But I was barely aware of them releasing. But when I went back and started to explore them, I just really found an appreciation for them. I'd also seen a show that Tyler did here in London last year, which involved a lot of his plotter work, and he was there to explain the kind of journey of creating a lot of the pieces, and so I could see that journey in this work. And then it took quite a lot of hunting to find somebody who was willing to sell. Nobody had any listed, I don't think, or maybe one person had them listed for a very high price. But I went off and uncovered who the collectors were for a lot of them with a bit of sleuthing, and reached out to them and asked if they'd be interested in selling both the NFT and the plotter work. And eventually found somebody who was willing to do that. And so bought the NFT, but then unfortunately the physical got lost in the post. Maybe so it's a little bit questionable what happened there. It was many hours on the phone with FedEx and USPS trying to track it down and never being able to do it. But also the seller slash sender of the work was never very cooperative in helping me find it. So it was always me trying to chase it down, and I didn't really have access in the same way that he would have had if he was really incentivized to find it. So it was a little bit of a frustrating experience. However, I've since come up with, Tyler has come up with a kind of creative solution to me not having the work, which I think he's asked me to stay hush hush on for the moment, because he wants to write a blog post about this kind of thing, about how the physicals tie into the NFT and what that means for him as a creator and what that means as a collector. But yeah, anyway, there is a kind of happy ending to a slightly frustrating story. But I also just very stoked to have this as an NFT as well, because I very much appreciate the work. And as you found when you were first looking at it, the file contains all the outputs from the work. So this is just kind of the one that you own as almost an individual freeze frame for a second, but the NFT contains all of the different iterations.
I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting piece. And I mean, that story is very unfortunate. And I think that's part of the problem with the physical digital combination. I know, like, for Lars Wander's line walking project that he did on plottables, like, there's been a few sales, and I know, like, in the Discord, people are trying to, like, figure out how to, like, physically ship them to each other. Like, is the collector going to be willing to send the physical with the digital? I think there's a whole kind of discussion to be had around that, like whether they're combined, whether they're separate. And I feel like for certain projects it maybe is more meaningful than others. But I mean, yeah, that's a frustrating story, but I'm glad that there will be a happy ending. And yeah, we're all looking forward to seeing that when that comes out.
Yeah, it is a real kind of quandary that we're going to have to face. I can't really see any beautiful solution, because each artist is going to has a different approach as well. You know, some of them will say
Yeah.
this NFT will only ever have one physical created once it's been created, and it's kind of marked off on a list, or changed in the metadata that it's been done. Whereas this one, you know, can have as many as you like, and for this cost, you can have them signed. And then there's always going to be cases of the physical and the digital getting separated, and there's just no, you know, there's no way to reconcile that. There's no art police out there that can like go out and bring them back together or anything. We're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, I know there really isn't a magic bullet for that, but I think just as, like, that's why digital art is so great. Like, digital art can't get lost in the mail. Like, I guess if you
Yeah,
send it to like the wrong like ETH address, I guess is one way for it to get lost in the mail, but I feel like that's fairly rare, and at least you have the recourse where, like, you can see where it got sent to. Whereas for like FedEx, it's kind of a black box. You don't really know what's going on. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but yeah, still a frustrating experience going through something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. As long as hopefully we don't send stuff to the burn address too often.
Yes, I hope not too. All right, we got 5 pieces left here. I know that we're a little bit at time, so I appreciate your willingness to go over a little bit. So yeah, we'll hurry up a little bit for these last
Yeah,
5 here. But
I'm very happy to go
one,
over it, but I'll also speed it up a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, no worries. I just want to be respectful of your time. I can go longer if you can.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to. I've got nothing as a hard stop.
Perfect. Well, yeah, let's go on to this archetype here. So this is the Chechel Golded number 141, part of the Art Blocks curated collection. And this one here, this output is very unique. I've not come across this one before, and especially this color palette. And just from looking at the traits, it seems like there's not that many that are in this palette, let alone like having it be the monochrome. So yeah, I would love to know how you came across this one and why you wanted to make sure that we included it today.
Yeah, so this is I was very much immersed in the Artblocks world prior to this mint and was excited to mint, and then actually we went away to this kind of backcountry hut for my daughter's birthday at the time. I think it was must have been her second birthday, and we didn't have any internet or any cell service there, and so I was kind of like, oh, geez, I'm just going to miss the mint. I guess there's nothing I can do about that. I did consider driving because again it would have been like 3 or 4 in the morning. I did consider driving back to the lake in the middle of the night, but decided that was kind of irresponsible that I should just let it go, and so missed it, and then came back on Monday and realized that it had been quite successful and everyone was quite excited about it. And then just was able to pick up a couple of pieces on secondary over the next few days. And this is one that I bought just because I found it really interesting, but then later found was discussing with Cheddar that it has a kind of hidden trait which is not in the metadata, in that it's a single color. There's only one color involved with the creation of it, which is obvious looking at it, but for some of them it's not clear. There are a couple that look like they're single color, but they actually have another color as part of the shading. But the single colors, there are only 8 of them, so it's in some senses it's the rarest trait. It's rarer than the cubes, which makes it just kind of interesting. I mean, it doesn't really make it a particular claim to fame, but it's just an interesting quality of I guess. Do we call them hidden traits? I can't remember what the term is, but it was exciting to kind of go on that discovery journey with Cheddar in his channel in the Artblocks Discord, and we kind of hunted out all the other ones, and he was able to bring up the using, maybe it was his generator, he could kind of show how the color fanned through the project as it was applied, and you could see where shading was used by either a darker version of the original color or by another color. So just for me, it was a cool journey to go on. And then I've been a big fan of his work along the way too. I've collected lots of his other pieces, including a couple of one-of-ones that he had on Super Rare, which I'm very stoked to have, called Owler and Bazaar. And then have met him a couple of times as well, which has been great. He was in Tokyo for Bright Moments Tokyo, and then was also in Venice a couple of months ago, which was cool to hang out with him there.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize just in terms of overall rarities of just the single color, because just from flipping through the collection, like it seems like there aren't many, but just knowing that there's only 8, just I always find that interesting. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that makes it super cool, but like I do think this output and just the form of the tiles and just that overall color of green is just like such a nice color. So yeah, I think this would look really nice as a print too. Do you have this
Yeah,
printed out?
definitely would. No, I don't know. It's something I'd love to have. I do have the one-of-ones, the Super Rare one-of-ones printed, but no, I don't have any archetypes printed, so that's something I should remedy.
And I'm just running out of wall space.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, but it's difficult. I need to open a gallery in the middle of nowhere somewhere so I can afford the wall space for all the
Yeah,
work I
please do. We'll all join
have.
you. That sounds like a fun field trip. All right, let's move on to Within Without number 81 by Aaron Penne. Love this project, just kind of going through the roots of the Solowitz wall drawings all the way to the Larva Labs autoglyphs. I know this was in partnership with Fingerprints Down. I just also love just the overall symmetry. It's like from left to right, top to bottom. You really get lost in it. So yeah, I'd love to learn a little bit more. I know with you being a part of the Fingerprints Down now for some time, I'm sure there's quite a story behind this one too.
Yeah, so actually, this one I was going to use as to some degree a segue to talk about gems and fingerprints because I didn't realize that you were going to have my PFP at the start, but because we've already covered that, I can use it more as a segue to talk about Aaron and my appreciation of his work. So yeah, this was a set of work that was produced in collaboration with Fingerprints, and the reason why I chose this one and why I find it kind of entertaining is there's a very rare gem of the PFP collection, which is a piece of like special one of one, and his palette is Miami Gem, or he's called Miami Gem. And then Aaron named this palette, of which there is only one instance, Miami Gem as well. So I have the Miami Gem Gem and the Miami Gem Within Without, which I consider the greatest pairing of all time. Not many people agree with me or even recognize that, but it's true. You just have to deal with it. And these are really cool. There's two traits, so they do move, and there's two speeds. There's conceptual and there's meditative. And I think conceptual you cannot recognize that they're moving, but meditative you can. And this one is not meditative, but it's worth exploring the meditative ones because they have a quite amazing pulse-like quality to them, as does other of Aaron's work, including returns, which is a real favorite of mine. I have lots of returns. They pulse over a long time frame, so sometimes can feel imperceptible. But if you just watch them for a while, they do change, and it's can be kind of confusing but enjoyable to the eye to watch them evolve. And then he has a bunch of great work. I really like his apparitions series. They're very popular back in that kind of busy period of art blocks because it was a larger collection. There was 1,500 of them, so there was kind of lots of ways for people to participate there. And he actually had the first drop on the new art blocks studio contract as well recently with a series called One More Day, which I bought a few of. And he also did two projects with Bright Moments in collaboration with Beretta, Rituals and Passages, which I'm a big fan of. They're like an audiovisual piece using generative music created by Beretta, but they have that same kind of pulsing quality and the same feel to them. So yeah, anyway, it was as a hat tip to Aaron and my love of his work, and also a kind of acknowledgement that it's part of that whole Fingerprints Gems ecosystem and the way I think about it.
I mean, that's like the perfect marriage between your love of generative art and the Jim's collection and your
Yeah,
relationship with the Fingerprints now. It's like the perfect Venn diagram of Blockbird, like having that
that's it.
Jim's
That's
plus
it.
this,
Yeah,
like this is it. That's
it's
incredible.
all in there. It's all in that one piece. Yeah.
Well, let's go to the last one on this wall here. And I remember vividly after finding out about Juan Rodriguez Garcia, finding that he had some foundation pieces because like he's an incredible artist. I think Dimitri told me about him like way back when, and then I go to see this piece. I see that it's already sold, and it's like, oh, of course Blockbird already has this. So it's like, how did you come across Juan Rodriguez Garcia? Because he's been posting like dailies or at least pretty close to it for quite some time. And if you do not follow Juan on Twitter, I highly recommend it. Just the work that he puts out day in and day out is just absolutely stunning. It's so unique. Just he's one of the greatest artists that I've come across, and very, very lucky to collect a couple of his works over on Tezos. But would love to know how you came across this piece in the first place.
Yeah, so I don't remember specifically. It might have been Dimitri mentioning him, I guess, as possible. But I do remember having followed him for a very long time, and that his work in progress pieces are just always so interesting. Like they're always him. Like you can see his style in them, but then they're so varied as well. And I've just it's been really interesting to see so many of them come through and that never actually make it to the minter, but watch him go on this kind of incredible journey. And I felt like he was significantly underappreciated for a long time, partly because he hadn't done a long form release. So he had these one of ones, um, and was kind of known for his work in progress pieces. But it wasn't until Bright Moments Mexico, where was it Bright Moments Mexico? I think it was, where he did Caminos, which is a 1,000 piece set, but it was not sold. It was given out one piece per mint pass, I think, something like that. So that was his first long form set, which was very maximalist. It's very busy, but very interesting as well. I really like those. And then since then, he's done a couple of really, really good smaller sets. He's now also working with Tony and Sophia at Arctic's Code too. So I think he's going to be producing more work with them. But yeah, recently he did Forma Eorden, which was I think one of the first ETH releases on FX Hash, and then more recently in Mi Cuerpo, which is a Maker's Place Arctic's Code collaboration, perhaps. But I love his work. I mean, this one I bought this one off Foundation, but early on, so few people knew about him that I could actually message him and just say from one of the works in progress, just ask him if he would mind minting this if I could buy it off him, and I got a couple of works just through that process, just saying, hey, would you mint this, and how much would you want for it? It's not one of these; it's at least one of the other ones I have. So it's kind of cool to follow that journey. And yeah, massive fan of his. I think he's been underappreciated for too long, so it's good to see him getting some more
Yeah, no,
recognition
I
recently.
completely agree. And just, yeah, seeing his journey over the last few years has been so much fun to watch. Because, yeah, seeing his work displayed at the Digital Art Mile in Basel was so cool. Like the setup that they had in there with
Right? Yeah,
his
yeah, it was.
project, and they
It
had
really
like
was.
that
Yeah,
triptych set up, and it just looked so good. And just knowing like how hard he's been working for so long. And I know like he's a teacher in Mexico and like gives back to his community. So it's just like all in all, such an awesome dude who creates incredible art. So it's been really wonderful to see.
yeah, completely agree.
Awesome. Well, we are down to the last two. So the last feature wall here, I thought these worked perfectly to put next to each other to cap us off. So let's start with Anticyclone number 540 by William Mapan. So I mean, this piece I don't even know if I really have that much words for it. Just the blues, the form, the color, everything about it is just so incredible. And like the texture of this project is probably my favorite part about it. Just like him just taking the boundaries of code to like the nth degree. But would love to learn a little bit more about. I know you did not mint this one. It looks like you collected it about 30 minutes after the mint. So seems like you had your eye on this one too. So how did this one get into the Blackbird collection?
Pete's just passed out from being too overwhelmed by it. I'm going to do the same thing. Boom. Yeah, so this was a case of, I mean, I'd seen William teasing Anticyclone, the kind of concept before the release. So I knew I was going to love it because it has this kind of mapping, topographical, what do you call it? Like this kind of relief feel to it. Quite organic structure. I just knew I was going to be really excited about them. And then for this trait combination is a Knight Guide 1, which has since become kind of like well known as being the most coveted in the series, but it was not clear that was the case early on. It was just really as I kind of mentioned before, it was just a case of me seeing it and being like, damn, that looks amazing. I don't really care if it's valuable or not. I need to have that. And so I got this one, and also a red one that looks a bit like a flower, which is also a night guide one. I don't remember if I overpaid for them or not, but definitely don't regret it if I did. And yeah, just over time, that I do like the red one, but over time, this blue one just keeps drawing me back over and over. So it's one of my favorite pieces of my whole collection. I just, yeah, just really appreciate it. And then William's work as well, it just is excellent. He keeps evolving, and he's pushing out into lots of different possibilities. So it's cool to watch that journey. Yeah, yeah. I think these will be anticyclone, and some of these pieces will be recognised as quite kind of important on this journey later on down the line. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Williams' work just across the board. I mean, starting with Dragons, that was the first time I came across his work,
Yeah,
and it's just striking at just how he's able to turn computer code into just magic. Like, I really don't have much more words than that. And I mean, especially anti-cyclone. Like, I've always been a fan of topographic maps. I know, like, my snowboarding goggles has like topography lines on it. So, like, I've always been a fan. So yeah, when I saw him working on this, it's like, okay, how am I gonna scrounger up the ETH to figure out how to mint one of these? Because I knew I had to have one of these in the collection.
yeah, nice. Yeah, I completely agree.
Perfect. Well, on to the last one, and I'm gonna say it. It's the best for last. I think this piece is just the emergence of it, just this project in general. Again, this is Memories of Chi-Lin, number 335 by Emily Shi, and like it's incredible. Like, especially with the blues, the movement of the whale. Like, I've never seen a whale breaching before, but like the majesticness of it, I'm sure can kind of be encapsulated by this piece here.
Yeah, to me, it's just a great example of how you can have this really curious emergence that was never intended. Like the classic cases, the Goose and the Ringers collection. But this is, I think, another excellent example where it's just, Emily had no intention of it producing an animal form, and it has in a really striking way where it's you're not making any mistake. You see it right away. And then there's also another one, a lion's head, which I think Thomas Lynn Peterson owns, which is also just very strikingly a lion. Like there's no escaping it. And I love that. And then I love the project in general as well. So it's like just feels like a double hit where you're getting something from a project that you really appreciate, from an artist you really appreciate, and then something extra special where it's just added in a new element completely by chance. The minting gods just kind of delivered something random, and yeah, like you said, I didn't mint this. Did I mint this? No, I don't think I did. I think I must have swooped on this later on.
Yeah, no, you swooped on this one too. So yeah, thanks to the trusty public blockchain. Looks like you got it
Yeah,
15 minutes after it was minted. So I'm imagining you were able to see it come across the feed before it was maybe on OpenSea. But again, like you had to have the wherewithal to click into it and be like, yep, this is the one, like I'm gonna get it. So I mean it looks
oh no,
like
actually, so now I'm looking at this. So actually, I minted this on an alt wallet.
oh
So this was me.
got
Yeah,
it.
I'm just looking at it now.
Wow. Well
Um,
that's incredible. It's just meant to be then.
I completely forgot I had this alt wallet. God, there's some real trash in here. That's funny. Yeah, yeah. No, so I did mint that one. I did mint that rather than snipe it. So
Wow, that's yeah, the minting gods
yeah,
were
that
absolutely
might
on
be
your
one of
side
my
that day.
one of my luckiest mints. Yeah, absolutely.
That is amazing. Well, I know we're about 20 minutes over, so I appreciate you sticking around. And everybody in the audience, thank you so much for walking and talking with us. This was such a fun episode again. And this on cyberspace will be here for the foreseeable future. I'm working on putting together the Walk and Talk Museum where we can have all of them kind of in one place. So TBD on that. So thank you all again for the time here on this Walk and Talk Tuesday. Blockbird, thank you so much for walking us through this, and truly appreciate everybody coming along with us in this gallery. It looks like there's quite a few of us here, so that's been really, really fun. So till next time, everybody, we will catch you.
Yeah, much appreciated. Much appreciated, everyone. That was awesome. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks again, everyone. Goodbye for now.